I believe that with my 8 kids and your 4 kids, we've got some jurisdictional ability to talk about fatherhood.
Yeah.
And I know we've both been through a divorce.
And particularly from a business with that aspect and a money aspect and fatherhood and Christianity. I mean, that's a unique take.
Yeah, well, it all weaves together in this beautiful tapestry at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's this amazing tapestry
Yeah.
that God put together that you couldn't see, but you didn't quit and you didn't lose faith. You stayed on, you kept putting one foot in front of the other, which can be complicated and really hard.
Yeah.
But the divorce that you went through that was devastating, and mine was a lot earlier on, and then but it was devastating. I mean, I know there are so many things about a divorce that you don't see, that you don't anticipate. You can't anticipate all of the ugliness that comes out of that, and it's just stuff that you can see, the obvious stuff that's going to happen. You know, we're going to sell the house and divide up the pots and pans and whatever estate we've got. We'll just split that up. The kids will have to divide and go through that nightmare, but you don't see the horrible day where you have to meet her new boyfriend.
Yeah.
And you think he's an idiot, and your kids are there with him, and there's just no way to anticipate that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's what happened in my case, but that's what happens in a lot of cases, and horrible moments that are not really something that I would wish on anyone.
Yeah.
But tell us a little bit about yours. Just the nutshell version.
Yeah. So, a lot of people don't know, but I've actually had 5 kids. So my first boy was born in 2008, and Zeke had a heart condition. And so he was born with a really bad heart condition called hypoplastic left heart. And so he went through 3 heart surgeries, open heart surgeries. He went through a whole bunch of other little minor surgeries, kind of lost track. I think it was like 12 or 15 other little surgeries, cutting this, tube here, whatever.
Was he your first?
Yeah, he was my first. And it was really tough because, growing up, I was one of those people, like I always was working on side hustles. And so it wasn't just business, but I was also like an outdoorsman, a fisherman, but I was also a pastor for a while. I was a pastor. I planted a church. In fact, me and my first wife, she was part of my church. She went to my church in LA. And so, I've done tons and tons of men's ministry, like probably literally sat down with like 1,000 men, I don't know, 800 men, like something crazy. But like, when you look at it, like when I look at it, it's like, 50 to 100 men a year, like just sitting down for over, decade and a half or so, or a couple decades, who knows, like, but having gone through all that, and then like my very first kid I'm thinking, man, this is gonna be such a blessing. And you think of all those things that your boy is gonna do. And then to hear like, he's not gonna live very long. Like that was just, that was nearly impossible to understand.
Shattered your soul.
Yeah, we had to make like an abortion decision on that whole thing, because like living in Southern California, the very first thing they start pushing on me and my my wife at that time was abortion. Like nobody actually has these kids. Like, you can be a Christian, you can sweep it under the rug, like ask God for
just have
forgiveness
another
later. And so I can just tell you that Zeke was he lived 7 years. He died in 2015.
7 years.
Yeah, he was the biggest blessing and the biggest, the craziest miracle in my life. Like, I realized after he passed away, like I feel like this whole life, like I feel like I was there for him, and I was in the hospital over 300 nights with him and all this stuff over 7 years. But then I realized, like after he passed away, I felt like God had also sent him to me. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, felt like he was there to change my life, And so it was this crazy, absolutely. Yeah. And even still to this day, like he, just everything I went through with him. And,
what caused the divorce?
I think a lot of it, for sure. I mean, statistically, if you just look at the statistics, like it's more than 9 out of 10 parents who lose a child, they get divorced. So within a couple of years, my ex had filed divorce on me. And so I mean,
Was
But
she a good mom?
yeah, she was definitely a good mom and stuff. And we just had differences, and I wish I would have did. We can talk about this maybe
Sure.
in depth at a different time. But like I just I think I I wish I would have did my family life a little bit smarter. I really wasn't going about it. I just wish I had better mentors, and I wish I would have brought more mentors into my life at that point around that.
Yeah.
I think it was tough. Like when you're successful young, you tend to think that anything you do is just going to work,
Yep.
and so you just think, well, all this stuff is happening, and then but then you don't realize, like, if you fail on something like your family, like, it's huge,
Yep.
and so I think overall, in terms of like just being willing to point the blame at myself as a man, which I think what men should do, like, I've realized like things that I could have did differently,
Mhm.
Earlier on.
Oh my gosh, dude! I could
and-
write a book about things I could
Yeah.
have done differently.
yeah, and I kind of like set myself up for 10 years later, like having a life where I felt like I was living a double life, but I set it up that way,
Yeah.
and so we can talk about that at another time.
Sure.
But yeah, Zeke died in 2015. I mean, I went through some crazy stuff. Like he actually died. He had a heart attack and died at my house 2 years before that. He died on my kitchen table, and I actually revived him through CPR. So it was
Oh my
like
gosh,
8 or 10
dude.
minutes after he was passed, he had stopped. His heart wasn't beating, but I revived him through CPR. And then he went through this whole like state where, like he was completely shriveled up with like a huge brain injury. They showed us like an MRI of his brain. It's like 70% of his brain was dead, and so he, like, I was read his death rights. They didn't think he was going to survive. He wasn't going to come out of that coma. Long story short, he did. He came out of it. He started walking again, eating food with his hands. Like, man, he lived a great life. Like, like I felt like one of the things that I was supposed to do in his life was I never let him think he was different. He was
He
one of
knew
us.
you were crazy about him. I guarantee you that much.
Yeah, I mean, he was one of us. He was a Smiley, and so like he everywhere we went, he was with me. Everyone knew that, and even when he was all shriveled up and like he couldn't walk, I
Doesn't
ended
matter.
up buying this like $150 backpack that you could put a 80-pound kid in.
Yeah.
And I would like carry him around in this huge backpack, and I would go on walks with him, and we would go fishing, and he couldn't really reel, but he would just be like kicking
So
me like
excited.
reel faster, get that fish, and so anyway,
I love it, man.
but yeah, so like a couple years after that, my ex filed divorce on us, and it was a drag out. So that'll be a whole another thing.
Yeah, a whole nother
It's-
episode.
It's
Okay.
still, the final punches are still being thrown.
Yeah.
So,
Right. Great.
but yeah, life's moved on. She's been remarried, and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
I'm moving on as well. So, but yeah, I think one cool thing about doing this as well is not only are we talking about like the bet and our backgrounds and our business backgrounds, but it's like, man, we're just two normal dudes.
Totally.
We've been through a lot of crazy stuff. We have parts of our life that most people may not know. Maybe they're somewhat secret. Like, most people don't know my son died, or a lot of people don't know I was divorced, or
Yeah.
that, stuff like that. And so anyway, I do feel like we'll have some opportunities to share a lot of that. And I think that would be really cool, is to talk about, my divorce. In a nutshell, I've spent almost $200,000 on the divorce,
Yeah.
just to be able to make sure that I could keep custody of my kids.
Yep. You did good,
And,
son.
yeah, it's been crazy. It's been a battle. And, my understanding is, I'm not sure if this is 100% true. I haven't seen this data point, but I've had like really big law firms like Coons Fuller, and people tell me like I'm a part of like less than 5% of dads
Yep.
that have custody of their kids that are under 10.